Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming here tonight on such a dismal, gray, rainy evening when it was so hard to get a taxi. I was asked by BAM to just give a few words of introductions for our guests here tonight, who we're so excited to be here with you right now. Ivo Van Hove is Belgian-born, Amsterdam-based, commonly often described as a bad boy of European theater, although some people think he's not quite bad enough. He joined Toneel Group Amsterdam in 2000. It's a leading European theater company that was started in 1987, just a few years after Angels in America premiered in the United States. And you may have seen his work here. He staged numerous plays here in the United States, in New York, Streetcar Named Desire, More Stately Mansions. Right now, Scenes from a Marriage is playing in the East Village. As for Mr. Tony Kushner, I don't think I need to tell you anything beyond what you already know. It's just such a pleasure to have you both here. So we'll just chat for a little while. We'll open the microphone to questions in a bit. But I'm going to start with a curveball, if you don't mind. Both of you work jobs very different in your early careers from what it is you do now. Tony, you were a switchboard operator at the United Nations Plaza Hotel, not just for a summer, but actually, as I understand it, for years, while you were a directing student at NYU.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ivo, you studied the law, also not as a dilettante, but quite seriously. How did those two experiences inform your work?
I was a dilettante switchboard operator. I didn't study it at all, and I don't think I was ever very good at it. It was just a way of making a living while I went through graduate school. So, and is the question, how did it influence?
Or did it?
It made me very determined to make a living at something other than a switchboard operator. I wrote my first play, Bright Room Called Day, on the graveyard shift at the UN Plaza Hotel. I asked for the late night shift because there weren't an enormous number of phone calls, so I could write while I was at work. And I wrote most of the play at the hotel.
And Ivo, how did your experience engaging with the law inform your work now with theater?
Well, I also studied American law. I remember it was very difficult because you have a totally different system here that in Europe and in Belgium, where I studied law, there is like you have to all the laws, number 1342, number A, B, C, and then you have to make an interpretation of that. But here you had to study all the cases that are there, and you can prove that you're right because there was a case in 1934. You know, that was one, and then you can make... So I thought that was very interesting and creative also, to search for that. But I stopped after 3 years because I found myself only in libraries, sitting in books, reading little things that didn't interest me at all anymore. And I thought I have to make a cut now. But I learned a lot because in the law, in Belgium, I had philosophy, psychology, it was a huge range of very interesting things that I studied for 3 years. And I think I still got a lot from that in my life, not only as a director.
And law is, I mean, I was thinking about this too, because I knew that you had studied law. I mean, law is argument, it's a dialectic, and theater is as well. I mean, there's a kind of a consonance. I always felt if I didn't make it as a writer, I would go either to nursing school or law school. And I felt that there's a great sort of continuum between theater practice and either of those professions. But it seems like it makes a great deal of sense. I know a number of people who were attracted to law and then went into theater.
Well, I had to do it for my parents because they didn't trust. that I could be a director. They didn't know what it was actually. I come from a very small village in Belgium, 2,000 inhabitants, farmers, and people that worked in the coal mines. So that's where I come from, a very small town. So they pushed me to do that. I had to do it.
Were they upset when you left?
Yes. What do you think?
Have they recovered?
It took my father 7 or 8 years to come to a production of mine. it was, I understood, because it is hard to accept that your son is doing something totally different from what you're used to.
Was your father a lawyer? Also?
No, he was a pharmacist.
Tony, would you mind letting me moderate?
He's taking over already.
Actually, Tony showed up with this huge notebook of questions, and he was like, "Thank God you're here." I thought I was going to have to moderate this, and I think you guys would have been just fine. But I am curious. I'm sorry, I'm being really selfish, but I'm desperate to know about your own experience first seeing Ivo's productions. What were they? What impressed you about his stagecraft?
Well, it's embarrassing to say this with him sitting here, but I've said this to him before. I mean, I think he's really one of the great theater artists alive today, and I've been an insane fan of his work since I first saw, I guess the first thing was Alice in Bed, or was
I think it was Streetcar.
No, Streetcar
was before Alice in Bed.
It was?
Trust me. Yes.
I do trust you, but
Streetcar was 98 and Alice in Bed was 2000.
When was More Stately Mansions?
That was before. That was the first one.
So so I saw More Stately Mansions first, and then I guess Streetcar.
Yeah.
And I was, I felt that they were sort of, well, it was the best production of Streetcar I've ever seen, the only production of More Stately Mansions I've ever actually seen, and a play that because I know it fairly well, would absolutely have assumed was completely unstageable, and it was spectacular and shattering. And Sontag's Alice in Bed with the very great Joan McIntosh, who was also in More Stately Mansions. The work with actors, with Elizabeth Marvel in Streetcar. When was Little Foxes was fairly recently. That was like 2 or 3.
2010.
Anyway, I've seen him take also some great European plays, Molière and Ibsen, but Tennessee Williams and O'Neill and Lillian Hellman. I mean, who knew? And I mean, suddenly Little Foxes is not just what one believed it to be, a really finely wrought, intelligently constructed, kind of perfect melodrama, but something by Aeschylus. I mean, something that went, absolutely straight to the heart of issues of marriage and life and death, and with some of the most astonishing performances. Chris, the late, very great Christopher of Evan Welch, and Elizabeth Marvel in Streetcar.
And Martin Shokos.
Yeah, I mean, the whole cast, it was a fantastic cast. But the Mitch Blanche scene, I go on and on about it at an incredibly tedious length. Anybody who's interested in Tennessee Williams, I just interviewed John Lahr on stage at the 92nd Street Y about his brilliant new biography, and was describing in incredible detail that Ivo's staging of it. I think he's a very, very great director. And when I went to Amsterdam and saw Angels, which was in its second year of performances there, I learned a vast amount about the play watching it, and things that actually helped. In 2010, the next year, when we did the revival of the play at the Signature, I did a considerable amount of rewriting of Perestroika, and in several instances, based directly on things that I had learned about the play including the most difficult part of the play for me, from Ivo's production.
And what was that production like? That first one you saw back in 2010 or so?
Well, you'll come and see it tomorrow. I mean, it's there's I don't really feel like I want to try and describe it, except that, and I didn't know this, I really don't think that anyone had, Jim Nicola, who is the artistic director of New York Theater Workshop and who introduced us and has produced almost all of your work in the United States, went to see it and came back and called me and said, okay, you have to go over and see this. And I always do what Jim tells me to do, and I wanted to see it anyway because, of course, I wanted to see what Ivo had done. But I don't think anybody told me what it was going to look like. You sort of warned me the night before, he said, you know, there's not a lot of scenery, which is an exaggeration. There's no scenery at all. I mean, there is, but it's really not a lot. And so it was the experience of watching this group of magnificent actors in on this empty stage of this gorgeous 19th century proscenium house, creating everything that the play asks actors to create, or the production to create, purely out of interaction. I don't want to give it away in case any of you, I hope you're going to see it here, but the arrival of the angel, which it's almost, it's just beyond belief. And I think of the many, many years of productions of Angels in America where we're like trying to figure out how to get the wiring so that the thing and the wings would open and all that stuff, which I think is important, but that doesn't happen in Ivo. But it made me cry. And I still don't know exactly what it means, and I don't think, I mean, but I do know what it means. Anyway, it's I'll just talk to myself.
But the first time, I know that we had, before I did it in Amsterdam, we had a long conversation together, mainly about the second part, because I had lots of questions about that, and I wanted to know from you intentions and what you meant with it. And you explained a lot to me. That's why this came together. But then at the end, I remember after all these hours, you said, "Okay, and how are you going? How are you going to do it?" And I said, "Well, you liked Street Cornelia Desire really well, very much. I'm going to treat you the same way as I treat Tennessee Williams." And there was a little shock in your eyes.
Who wouldn't want that? Well, but I didn't get a bathtub. There was no water on stage at all.
That's true.
But
Can you tell us about your decision to strip Angels in America down and make it very, very bare?
Well, that's so hard, how that comes to your mind. I know it developed. Once a play is chosen, and I wanted to do Angels in America for a long time, already in the 90s, but I work in Holland. At that time I worked in Holland, which is a very small country, and once somebody else has the rights for a play, another director or another company cannot have the rights. And another company had the rights first in the 90s, a good friend of mine actually, who directed it afterwards, very good production. And well, I didn't forget about it, but it was like, okay, good, it has been done. But it kept coming back into my mind, and I reread the play then in 2005 or 6, and I thought it was fantastic, not dated at all, not because of the AIDS, Reagan, all these things, you know, they became for me like more important even like metaphors, like meaningful, a meaningful period in a political life and a society somewhere in the world. It became like bigger than life. So then we started, Jan Verswijfeld, who is the set designer, and me, we work very close together on these things. And it developed. First we had lots on stage. First it was from the first moment on very important that we developed something that represented a transition between life and death, a transformational thing on stage. And first we thought about the hospital, because of course in the second part people get really sick, are dying. You see that the decay in front of you, beautifully written, terrible also, terrific and awful at the same time. And we started with a hospital, well, not almost a hospital on stage, but I know that at a certain moment I phoned Jan, and I said, Jan, but what's really the core of this play? This lots of scenes there. What's the core? And then we came, well, very simple, to the empty space, a place where everything is possible. It was actually the idea came from the scene. I hope I pronounce it well in the diorama scene. The diorama scene is a beautiful scene, but that horrified me a little bit, how to do that on stage with the puppets and then with And then I think, one perhaps it could be in the imagination, in the fantasy of the audience, that actors say, look at that, you see there, you see that, and that you start seeing it without it being there. And that's the way it's, well, complicated road that ended into an empty space where it's purely a space for fantasy, for imagination, where everything is possible, and where, at the end of the day, you only look at human beings, because that's what I think is so beautiful about the play, that it deals with human beings, fragile. Well, sometimes they pretend not to be fragile, like Roy Cohn, but he ends, I think, very fragile, and he's moving at the end. Human beings, it's like a domestic drama, a drama about human beings, simple people, and at the same time it's world drama, and that's so fantastic. I think that's great.
You've staged it multiple times. It's part of your repertoire. When do you decide that it's time for Angels in America?
What do you mean?
How do you decide?
Oh, that, I don't know. Well, that's really it's a cowardly answer, but it's true. It's a love affair. Suddenly, you think about a play again, you read it, and you immediately think, yes. Which I had already, this love affair in 93 when it was written, or 92, 93 when it was written, but it came back immediately. It's a love affair. I don't know why. And then, of course, my job as a director is then, during the preparation, because I cannot go to my actors, believe me, it's great. That's not possible. So I have to start finding words to talk about it, finding realistic ideas, a set, a world, create a world, and rationalize it a little bit, finding ways to talk about it. And that always takes me 1 year up to 2 years to really finalize, well, a big production like this, because that's what it is. So it's a process. It's like a wine. It takes time.
Tony, what is it like for you to see Angels in America in Dutch?
I thought it sounded good, and I don't know any Dutch at all. I could pick out some German-sounding things here and there. My friend Oscar Eustace always says that I like productions of my plays better in foreign languages, and maybe he's right about that. But I thought I couldn't judge the translation exactly. And Ivo made changes in the text. I mean, not rewrites, but there were, it's 5 hours long. So how long is the?
It's 2 hours. I think it's twice 2 hours 10 with an intermission. I think in the first part I didn't change anything. It's in the second part that we.
You must have though, because the
but
first
perhaps
part
we play a little bit faster.
Well, that may be true too. Well, yes,
I don't know.
It is played with a great deal of speed, and of course, not having any scenery on stage means there's no waiting for transitions, or costume changes for that matter. It's although thrillingly. Should I say this? Is this giving anything? No, don't. Spoiler alert. Okay, I won't say anything. I won't say anything. There's something really brilliant that's done with the costumes. That you see at the very first moment, it sort of reveals the entire production in this one gesture. But anyway, I won't say what it is.
There might be people that don't see it. So.
Well, screw them. Buy a ticket. It's. I'm sorry. What was the question?
You really enjoyed watching it in Dutch.
Yes, I did. I really did. And I've seen productions of it in other languages. I saw a production in, I won't say what language, but because that would give it away, but a production that remains the most horrifying. The entire first part was done in 1 hour and 10 minutes, and it was the most horrifying 1 hour and 10 minutes I've ever spent in a theater, at least in which I was at least ostensibly involved. And so I've had some tough times, but I thought it sounded great. I mean, the actors, the Tenniel Group actors are mind-bogglingly brilliant. What you were saying about I was sort of nodding my head about the frailty of the characters, the exploration. I mean, it's interesting because in two ways the production wound up sort of speaking to two of the things that were the original impulses in writing the play. When we were talking about this upstairs, I thought, American theater or modern theater has very largely surrendered the fight to the effort to create illusion because we are so ashamed of our inability to create illusion that in any way competes with film, which increasingly is successful in creating illusion that is not in any way detectable as dream or phantasm that looks like completely supplants reality. And once we start getting microchips in our head and taking the right drugs to go in and watch, Avatar 6, it'll be a complete, and I loved Avatar. I can't wait for the drugs and the microchips. But I thought, that was based on a kind of a misunderstanding of the nature of illusion, that in theater, the point is to create an unsuccessful illusion. The point is, what Ivo was just describing so beautifully, the sort of engagement of an audience's imagination through the effort of the actor, through the skill of the actor, and the sort of enlisting of the audience and making the audience complicit in the creation of illusion. And also, I've said this a billion times, but Brecht and Shakespeare and everybody else, that illusion is only partly successful in theater, therefore you're forced to confront reality with a kind of double vision, and you're straddling between belief and disbelief, and you can't understand theater or life if you're too completely skeptic and don't believe any of it, or if you're too completely credible and believe everything you're told, like you were some sort of Republican or something. Credulity and skepticism have to be set into a kind of a dialectical spin, and so that was one impulse. And putting in all the magic tricks, I wanted to make people try and fly angels and things. And while Ivo, more radically than any production I know of, rejects that, it winds up being, in its own way, an enormously powerful experience of the nature of illusion in theater. Again, there are a few moments in the production where, what's being done on stage requires enormous skill, but it's not an action that people who have no training couldn't kind of imitate if they wanted to. There's no special levers and pulleys, and yet it moves you into some kind of very powerful, altered sense of reality, and its familiarity is part of its power. The other thing that was, I read when I was starting to think about writing the play, I read the obituary of Roy Cohn in The Nation, I think by Robert Sherrill. That was this sort of nasty, gloating, and quite homophobic. And I found myself in the very weird position of feeling bad for Roy Cohn, who I'd hated since I was 10 years old, and feeling a connection to him. And his death, writing the parts of Perestroika that involved him coming apart at the seams, the way that you did back then in the later stages of HIV illness. Again, there's never been a more beautifully explored version of that I've seen than in this production. And it really invites you in a way, I think maybe more than anything else, I left the Tenniel Group production thinking this is a play about human frailty and the frailty of the body. And I'm happy with that. Maybe I'm happy with the frailty of the body, but I'm certainly happy with that as a reading of the play.
How do you, Ivo, it's obviously an unbelievably universal piece of work, but it also contains a great deal of extraordinarily specific and very American ideas, references, and obsessions. It's the whole post-millennial thrust of it, the premillennial, the millennialism of it, the references to Ed Meese. How do you, as a Dutch theater group, engage with the Americanness of the production?
I like America. I love America, as you know. I did a lot of American plays. American culture is so part of our life, And of course, very specific things like at Mies, there is Wikipedia, well, not at that time perhaps, but you can find it, the information. It's not so difficult. You have to understand it. What we did in this production is, because there is no set, but there is a little bit of a set, because we use, in a very minimalistic way, video. And in the video, we create New York in the beginning of the 80s. You still see the Twin Towers, they're still there. But we use it in a way that it's totally realistic, the images. They are totally realistic, not at all manipulated, but they become like mythical images. Also the angel in Central Park, all these images are there, so we use that. And that's the way that I dealt with I never situate a play in the specific time, so the costumes are not like 80s costumes, but I don't do that with Tennis Williams, I don't do that with any play. With Molière, you know, it's not like in the century that Molière was living. That's not my thing, but I always use one or two things that refer to that time, at that moment. And in this case, that's the images, and also the music by David Bowie.
And if you don't know this, the only music, in fact, I believe the only sound in the production is from David Bowie. Yeah. How did you come to that?
Well, it was for me like 1 + 1 is 3. You know, like the beginning of the 80s, for me as a young boy, was David Bowie. And also he, of course, a lot of his songs are about changes. Well, one of his songs is changes, and that's what for me the play is about. It's about people that are stuck in impossible relationships, loveless relationships, that are stuck in a frame of a right-wing government, that are considered as outsiders while the government pretends that everybody is equal and that there is equality, and that's so beautiful about the second play. Then things start to come together. It's something beautiful that in the first part a lot of the characters have their own hallucinations, and then in the second part they're together in each other's hallucinations. So that it's like new people that you would never think that would meet together and do this to each other. We are together. And that's what I found that a fantastic human gesture. But I forgot now the question, but perhaps this is what was important for me to stage. People that got stuck and then suddenly get in touch with another life, another person, and that transform slowly and develop into a new life.
Do you think about it politically at all? It is such a political
Yes, of course,
play.
the 80s, but that's for us, we can understand that also in Europe, that the Reagan time was a very right-wing time. You know, also Reagan for us is like something that everybody relates to. We know about it. It's deep in our genes also, our DNA, you know, it's deep, we know about it. It's like the Clinton era, it's also like an era, you know, so that's not so. That's something that is that's why I think the play is so wonderful, because it's very American but also really universal. So I think you have to understand the political context very well. You have to study it, but if you understand it, you can bring it without really understanding it for the audience. You don't know the need who is at me specifically, but we have to know, of course, in order to perform it in a good way.
Just interesting that, you know, Reaganism, I mean, in the first bunch of productions of the play in Europe, still felt, I think, a little bit like this kind of scary thing that was happening in the United States. In the last decade, it's really moved into, I mean, suddenly Europe has moved into Reagan, well, Reagan think is kind of an oxymoron, but you know what I mean? It's like I mean, this in the Netherlands, for instance, with, you know, a really sharp economic downturn, with the government, you know, cutting programs in the middle of the economic, I mean, doing exactly what the Republicans in this country have been advising and making us do for the last 40 years, which is, you know, destroying it. I mean, it's refusing to learn the lessons of the Great Depression. And it's now become kind of epidemic all over Europe. So I don't know if I'll just throw that in.
Well, were there political messages that you were hoping to pull out of the text? It sounds like you were really engaging it very much in many ways as a love story.
A love story? No. Well, there's a lot of love, but it's not a love story for me, Angels in America. It's about getting out of your own frames, the frames of society, the frames that you're unhappy within, and it's very hard to make decisions to cut something off, which you're so used to. Harper and Joe, they have to separate, and Harper gets out really. Joe still is not really free at the end. So that's so beautiful. It's ambivalent. It's not like a feel good or like a one-dimensional. Roy Cohn dies, and as Tony says, the person that you hated the most in the play, you really feel for in the last half hour of the production. You know, for me that was really important. At the end of the day, it's also a human being dying from AIDS, and also Belize is then with him. It's human. It's not about love. It's about the need for people. But I think the need for people to transform, to not get stuck in a situation that you're unhappy with, politically spoken or individually, or also on an individual level.
There's a scene in your production that I saw where two of the couples are fighting, and you staged it in a way that I certainly hadn't seen before, and they take up so much...
No, they just fight, that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, and they take up so much space, it's hard to imagine there even being room for any scenery. Their emotions are just, there's almost not enough room for them on the stage. Can you talk a little bit about getting these kinds of performances from your actors and
they are there, so it's just so. Well, I can compare it. I did now scenes from a marriage here at the East Village, and there is also a huge fight. There's a huge quarrel that ends in a fight. And Dallas Roberts, who is a great actor, I love him, he came to me. So in the first week already, I said, yes, Ivo, there is in scene 5, it's a fight, it says. How do you see that? I said, well, Dallas, fight, you know? But there is then somebody coming to learn us how to fight. I said, no, just do it as you do it at home. And he was a little bit like shocked, like at home. He's like, do you never fight with your wife? Yeah, you know, and you have to allow that, I think, because in the theater, some things have to be real, but of course, you don't really hurt each other. That's totally not the intention. That should not happen, but you really, how to say this? I'm a very physical director. I touch the actors all the time, and at a certain moment it's not a problem. I don't know, but also they wanted to be real. They wanted to be, you know.
What do you mean when you say it's at a certain moment? Because I think about things like Beth Marvel in Little Foxes. And, I mean, I'm curious too. How does that happen? I mean, how do you get to a place where the actor is suddenly? There were moments when suddenly this kind of demon came out of her, and it's certainly a level of feeling that has never been seen before in a Lillian Hellman play. I think, from everything I've read, Lillian Hellman would probably have loved it, but
I think every actor is really interested in finding something very personal, something very deep, something very unique, therefore, something very exclusive. And I think every actor wants to find it, and I think every director should be interested in searching for that. And that's what I'm, anyway, interested in. And I think the actors, also in New York now, everybody knows me, so they know, you know. I think that's the only reason that we are doing this job. I'm not...
I think that
it gets
sort of
too deep now.
No, but I think that the thing that's mysterious to me
Yeah.
is that it's not just that there are these moments of tremendous passion or violence or cruelty or heartbreak, but that they live in the same world as, and of course in your work with Jan, it's not a naturalistic staging in any way. It's not like a carefully detailed apartment. But there's both these kind of volcanoes of feeling, and then 1 second later, incredibly specific, very finely detailed, naturalistic psychological behavior. And to have a company that can...
Yeah, but they're very good. But they're really, I don't know what it is. It's all, but I have, but you say now a company. I have a company, an ensemble of actors. These actors, we work together for years and years and years. Sometimes an actor goes, other actors come, but basically there is an ensemble who is, we are stuck together, but also there is a huge trust. So once you start a rehearsal, there is not so much discussion. You don't have to get to know, you don't have to be polite to each other. You can go to the core immediately. When we start rehearsals, it's like as if we have a premiere tomorrow, you know? That's the level. So, but that's because we are an ensemble. We know each other, we trust each other, and when you trust each other, you also are not afraid to fail. And that's perhaps the bottom line. It's so important for me as a director also. I say so many times to my actors, I don't really know, perhaps this is totally stupid what I say, but this is what I think it should be, somehow this. And then I don't know exactly what it should be, but that perhaps gives inspiration, and that goes both sides. You know, and that's perhaps the bottom line. Trust creates the freedom to fail. And in a rehearsal room, and because a rehearsal is a process towards a premiere, you should be totally relaxed that you can fail and that nobody will blame you or nobody will laugh at you when you get out of the door. And in a rehearsal room, and it's for me very important, when you close the door of a rehearsal room, everything is allowed. I can utter whatever thought I have. And it should not be used against me when I get out of that rehearsal room. And it's the same for the actors. When an actor is really vulnerable, you should not use it against him or her outside of the rehearsal room. And I think I never have broken that trust.
When Tony mentioned Jan, he was referring to Ivo's both life partner, or I don't know if you guys are married yet. And also set designer seems a little inadequate of a description, but who designs your productions. You've worked together for over 30 years. I believe you met in a dance class. Is that right? And I don't know if that's a bad thing. I think
we were 21, huh? You know? Yes.
Can you talk about how you collaborated on this particular production?
But that's the million-dollar question, which I have no answer to. But it's really true. It's asked for me, you know, also now when I had interviews, it's always asked again and again and again. I have no answer to it. Jan. I have no answer because it's like it goes on all the time in bits, but not all the time, of course. But it goes on all the time. We have meetings with each other, but that's when we have meetings together with the video designer. But we don't have meetings. You know, we talk all the time, and all these productions. For instance, now we are in the middle of preparing, I think, 3-4 productions we are talking about. And of course, it's very focused, but it's like an oeuvre. Is that good English? That's French. How do you say that? A body of work. That's how we see that. It's and what I like about Jan, that's perhaps simpler to say. What I like about him and his attitude, even after 30 years, that he doesn't take anything for granted. That he is a designer that really reads the text, that doesn't ask for a resume and then starts designing. That really, he knows the text better than me, he knows exactly what's where. And then, what I like about him is that he I think when you see Angels in America, and when you would go to the next day to Scenes from a Marriage, it's totally different productions. When you compare it to Roman Tragedy, it's totally different. You see references, of course, in the uses of material and things like that, but it's totally different. So what we try to do, and what Jan is very good at, is that we take every play for what it is, and we look at it, and we try to find how does this play wants to be directed in the most unique way in the world. What do we have to say about this? What world should we bring on stage? And that's what we do, and we don't give in for a compromise there. That's what we never do. Even after all these 30 years, and we live together, as you said, but it's not hard at all, because we can really disagree totally, but we never agree to disagree. We go to the moment that we really agree on something. And that's not a compromise. That's like sometimes there is my opinion, his opinion, and then we have a third better opinion. That's also possible. But we never give in. So even after all these years, we don't think, well, it's good enough. It's never good enough. It has always to be better.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
I'm afraid of your questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why? Anyway, I'm curious if you've noticed a pattern, or if there's a moment at which you guys decide that a play that you're staging is going to stay on the stage, or become an environmental, as Scenes is, the Roman Tragedies.
That's true. I think the first decisions are always in that way. Jan, it's like it will be like a triangle, or it will be like more like an installation, or like we call it sometimes architecture, which, for instance, Little Foxes was like an architecture on stage. Yes, that's a basic decision. Also, if it's like a more cold atmosphere, like, for instance, Cries and Whispers, which was here a few years ago, or it's more warm, which Scenes from a Marriage is more from. Yes, that's like basic atmospheres that we slowly decide. But sometimes it changes. For instance, we are working now on Antigone, which I'm going to do later this season. And we started with, we thought it was going to be a cold atmosphere, but it turns out now, while working on it, it becomes warm. That it becomes totally different, that it becomes chaotic, and not this very precise things that we sometimes can do, which we did with The View from the Bridge in London, for instance. That was a very precise Japanese, almost in a Japanese way, orchestrated, directed, designed production. So, but that whole has always to do with the material, with what you write. It starts there. For us, we don't invent anything. It's the text that makes us fantasize about it, and it all comes from the text. We always go back to the text. Today we were working on the Kings of War, Shakespeare project later this year, and we always go back to the text. Jan and Talia, then the video guy, we always say, what's exactly in this monologue? You know, what should we do? So they always call me here deconstructionist, and you know, all these things, as if I rip apart texts. I don't do that. I take a text very serious. I start from the text. In that way, I'm a very classical director.
Yeah, I think that's really true.
You mentioned A View from the Bridge, and you've shown a great deal of affinity for the texts of O'Neill. And Tony, you're working on some O'Neill projects. I was hoping to ask both of you, actually in tandem, about your interest in O'Neill and the projects that you're working on, and what is it about O'Neill that is why he's a source of fascination?
Well, my fascination, I did Desire on the Elms, More Street Dimensions in 2 different versions. I did More Street Dimensions twice. I did Long Day's Journey now, 2 years ago. For me, Eugene O'Neill, well, first of all, it's a theatrical challenge for me. He challenges me to think about theater. What's my position in theater today? So that's a huge, fantastic thing. But the other thing is that he makes me think about who I am. Because we always want to have the illusion that we are ourselves, that we have made ourselves, that we are not dependent upon our family, that we don't have a DNA that's coming from the family. And that's what all these plays, for me, are about. People that want to get away from the family, but are always have to go back into the family. So his plays make you think about what biology does with a human being, and how you can and how perhaps you can escape from that, and how at a certain moment in your life, well, we're talking about my parents. Of course, I had to get away from them in order to become a director. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible. But then when you're 30 years old and you come back home and you look at your father sitting at the other side of the table, you see yourself, and you don't want to see that. That's what it is. You don't want to see that. But you know it's you. And that's what O'Neill is about for me, this ambivalence, this existential struggle for me.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that he makes you think about theater. When I was an undergraduate at Columbia and first read Brecht, Brecht was God to me, and everything else except for Shakespeare, which is, well, Shakespeare was sort of the god of gods. But then in terms of playwrights who were a little less superhuman and more approachable, Brecht seemed to me, and he still does seem to me to be one of the greatest ever. But I thought anything that wasn't Brecht, and I read a lot of his theoretical writing and picked up on he had this great quip. He says, American plays are written for people on the move by people who don't know where they're going. And so I sort of, except for Tennessee, because I'm from the South and the gay thing, I always loved Tennessee. But Miller and O'Neill, I thought, I've completely realized how stupid I was about both of them. The big turning point for me with O'Neill was a production that I saw years ago at Center Stage in Baltimore, directed by my friend Lisa Peterson. And she basically did it. It was Moon for the Misbegotten. And it was, she simply put the sky on the floor and the house in the sky or something, and threw in a couple of theater songs. And it was a wonderful production. It was also the first time that I'd seen anybody actually sort of express in a production the essential theatricality. This is the son of a great actor whose entire reinvention of American drama is at war with a tradition that James O'Neill, was a great practitioner of, and that O'Neill's plays are deeply about the act of making theater and about illusion and reality and self-deception and the deception of, all of that is so alive in his work. And that made me go back and start reading him obsessively. And then I read the Louis Schaeffer 2-volume biography. And I think it's probably safe to say there is no writer in the history of the world that has a more perfectly shaped life for biography than Eugene O'Neill, who ends his life writing his Moon for the Misbegotten, Iceman Cometh, Huey, and Long Day's Journey are written after he won the Nobel Prize at the end of his life. And it's packed with a kind of incident. It's a horrible story in many ways, but it's packed with this kind of, it just reads, it's not amazing, 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 and then 40 years of, collecting used dental floss or something. It's shaped like an O'Neill tragedy, and I was blown away by it. So I started working on a screenplay about an event in his early life, which I'm almost finished with. I've been working on it for 18 years. And about 4 years ago, Janine Tesori, with whom I wrote the musical Caroline or Change, asked me to come up with a libretto about an American artist for a commission she'd been given from Glimmerglass Opera. So I wrote about a fight between Carlotta and a libretto about a fight right 2 years before O'Neill died in this house in this place called Marblehead Neck, a fight between Carlotta and Jean that led to their separation, and now I'm working on the second half. So it's a musical or opera, or whatever the hell it is, about the death of O'Neill, which, you know, you don't need to be Freudian to sort of figure that. It's like, you know, die, daddy, die. But you know, I think he's a great poet. I think there's a, you know, Mary McCarthy and all these very smart critics mocked his writing so much, but it's the period that it comes from is very clear. Same thing could be said for Shakespeare and John Keats. It's not, you know, or Emily Dickinson. It's not like it dates, but it comes from a very particular point in American history. But in that point, the rhythms of it and the electricity of it and the voluptuousness of it and its ability to consider a topic and then suddenly plunge into some sort of understanding. I mean, the speech in Long Day's Journey, you know, stammering is the native eloquence of us fog people. It's like one of the greatest things ever said about American speech. So it's just, you know, I think he is our greatest playwright. Long Day's Journey is one of the greatest plays ever written. It's immensely mysterious. When you, Vanessa Redgrave and Brian Dennehy's production, you know, it's 4 hours long, very little happens. And by any stretch of the imagination, a Broadway audience should be pretty restless. And people weren't breathing. And it's demonic. It just starts and you know, all life in the universe gravitates to that little room. Wow. And it holds you there, you know, in horror and compassion for 4 hours. It's just overwhelming. So.
And is it true, I read in passing, that you're working on a play just for Toneel Group, Amsterdam?
Well, we talked about it. I'm very slow.
It was going to be finished by 2012.
And it was. I mailed it to you. I thought you never got it. I'm working on it.
We have a good title.
Next question. I would really love to. We did talk about it. I have an idea. I told Ivo and Jan the idea. They seem to like the idea. I'm going to do it, and I'll write it in English.
Okay, there's really a lot of witnesses here now.
I'm waiting until I've gotten fluent in Dutch to do it, and I'm almost there.
Do you have any other collaborations planned?
Sorry?
Do you have any other collaborations planned?
With Tony? Mm-hmm. Not yet, but we were talking just that he did a... I liked a lot, I don't know the title because it's so long, Homosexual's Guide, but I saw that production at the Public Theatre, I really liked it, and I heard now that Tony has rewritten the text a bit, so I'm very interested in reading that, because I thought it was a very meaningful, again, a very meaningful play about a time gone by almost, and again, the same transition. What will be next after this 20th century that's gone by with its ideologies? And I liked it. So I'm curious to read that.
Have you done a lot? I'm sure I've asked you this, but have you done, I mean, I don't want to but I mean, I'm curious about the question of, I'm sorry, this thing is driving me crazy. As a switchboard operator, I should be able to handle this, but I can't. I didn't take that class. I mean, you know, you've done plays that sort of exist in the world, or plays that have, you know, so much accumulated around them, like Streetcar or Little Foxes. How much experience have you had working with a playwright on a brand new play?
I almost never did it. And that's a weakness of mine. I'm afraid of you guys. It's just, no, what I'm afraid of, but really, is that I just explained that I did only once with Chuck Mee. He wrote Perfect Wedding for the company. And it went really well. And now Simon Stephens has written, but he wanted to write a play for me, and I said, oh, well, let's start with the monologue then. You know, and he wrote now a monologue for Ilko, who is also in the production. We have rehearsed it already a little bit, and so that's a start. But with you, I would do it immediately. You know that. But we discussed that.
Just,
But
you know,
it's just for me, it has to be the best in the world, and not like, yeah.
I find the hardest relationship in the theater is, and I don't know if this would be true. I mean, I'm not sure, because I always feel in the United States that the villain is the amount of rehearsal time. That if rehearsal time was more generous, there would be a kind of an organic way to understand how the playwright of a brand new play should be involved at the points when he or she should be involved, and then an organic way to get rid of him or her, because I think they have to leave at some point to allow discovery to happen without their authority. And in the United States, when we rehearse a play for 4 weeks, no matter how long it is, there's no way to avoid the train wreck. It becomes a kind of I mean, people get through it, but I think it's a very difficult relationship. Right? So, you're going to like change your mind about working with me. But anyway, it'll. I would love to do that very much.
Well, okay.
I'm going to turn things over to the audience. We have some time left for Q&A. I've been asked to tell you to please go to the mic, speak into the mic. We've got 2 on either side, and there also may be some questions. No, we don't have any questions from social media, which is just fine. It's just us. So I am going to call upon anyone who might have a question for Tony or for Ivo. Yes, ma'am. And remember, please, can you, oh, and I'm sorry, there are people there already, so I'm going to ask you to go to that mic, if you don't mind.
Okay, but there was, perhaps you can...
Yeah, I saw, yeah.
It's right there in
Right.
the...
You were talking about the rehearsal aspect, and I wondered whether the people stayed in character in that room together. Did they stay in character? Do they improvise? How does that work?
That makes me think of your story, staying in character, yeah, of the Daniel Day-Lewis.
What is the story?
That's well, perhaps everybody knows in America,
Well,
but
I think people mostly know. I mean, Daniel stays in character for the whole filming of the thing. I mean, the whole way.
But then Steven Spielberg had to say when he went to give him a direction, Mr. President, can I say something to you? No, it's like...
Well, he didn't have to say that. I mean, he didn't have to like
You
approach
told
him
me that.
in fear. It wasn't a play about Richard Nixon. It was a movie about Abraham Lincoln. So he was a nice president. But no, I mean, they stayed. Daniel had a name for Stephen, and Stephen called him Mr. President, and everybody did. And I've said, you know, everybody. I mean,
And you couldn't be there, so you had to
well,
hide.
I was there, and Daniel knew that I was there. But we texted, tweet. I don't tweet, but we texted. Back and forth occasionally, and I started signing my texts your metaphysical conundrum because I didn't know what I was supposed to be. But the one thing I'll say about it is that I mean, you really can't argue with the results. And when you see somebody, and this is true, I mean, Elizabeth Marvel and Bill Camp were in the first scene of Liga. When you see an actor, and they're supposed to be somebody in the 19th century, and they're wearing a beard and a thing, and this machine from the 21st century is like smashing into their face, you know, with guys in baseball hats, you know, boring. The concentration that it takes is terrifying, and film. We had a very tight filming schedule, and I mean, and what he does, it's not because he forgets that he's Daniel Day-Lewis. And he dropped the character the minute we filmed the last scene. He suddenly became Daniel again. But I mean, it's a very severe discipline that I think has produced some of the most astonishing performances. But so anyway.
But Liz and Bill told me that they said it was very good the atmosphere. So that it was not like a nasty or a terrifying atmosphere. It was like, that felt like they could play the scene very easily. But I think Daniel Day-Lewis is really an exception. He is really good at it. We never do that. We never stay in character. That means that perhaps MTV had this Unplugged series long time ago. Kurt Cobain, I will never forget this. In the beginning of the 90s, Kurt Cobain was doing Unplugged, and he was sitting there with his group around him, and he was playing a song very intensively, totally into that song. And then the song was over, and he just took a little bit of his water. He just said, "Everything okay?" to one of his guys, and then he started, and then with the same intensity he started. And that's what I like about actors. And that's what we do, I think, you know? We are not in character. Nobody is standing an hour before the production starts in character. I was shocked by it. There was a documentary made when we did Husbands, John Cassavetes. There was a documentary made about the actors rehearsing that. And there was opening night, and the three husbands were 2 minutes before they had to enter. And it was filmed, and of course I'm never there at that moment. I'm in the auditorium, you know, sitting. They were like joking, like as if, you know, like 2 minutes before they had to enter. And it was a fantastic performance that evening. So for them, that works. I think for Daniel Day-Lewis, I think this works, but I think for most actors, that's an impossible thing to stay into character.
I also think that it's an interesting difference between, film is a very odd medium, and it's incredibly exposing in a way, and it, at least within the conventions that we've created for most film, if you're aiming for any kind of illusion of realism, it's immensely hard to get. Once you get it, it can be overwhelming, but it's really hard to get, and it requires a kind of, I think that's the particular cost. There are other things in theater that are just as difficult. But I think moving in and out of character in a certain sense, and entering a space where an audience, and the audience's concentration is collaborating with you in the experience of creation, is a very different thing than being on a film set.
Yes, sir.
Tony, you mentioned that having seen this production in Europe is what made you do the rewrites before the signature.
It helped me with, I did the rewrites because there are things that I wanted to fix, but yeah, it taught me some specific things.
What is that, because you get productions all the time of things you have already written, what is the relationship between the insights you get for new work and about your previous work in seeing the productions as they go?
Well, you see a really great director and really great actors working on stage on something you've written, and you start to understand something about the nature of it. The hardest part of the play to write, of both parts of the play, and the part that's always hardest to stage is it's called the anti-migratory epistle in the text, and it's what the angel finally comes to say to Prior. And I've rewritten it more than anything I've ever written, and it's always frustrating in production, frequently because of an attempt to make the angel fly throughout the whole thing, and it turns into a kind of circus act, which I think is a way of, I finally understood on my part, and also on the part of other people working on it, sort of running in terror from the scene because of a distrust that it's going to work. Again, I don't want to give away anything, but maybe I could just, as I remember from watching it, the three people involved, the angel, Prior, and his friend Belize, sit on stage and talk, and that's all.
Yeah, but it was a hard scene to rehearse. I remember that. That was not so easy to get to that because the text is very complicated and seems to be abstract a little bit at that moment. So it was very hard, and we discovered for us it worked very well to have them very close together and in an intimate space together while they are not really together there.
And I think it is, you know, I'm not William Blake. I've never seen an angel. I don't know what an angel is. I mean, I'm sort of glad, you know, if I could write that poetry, maybe I would be willing to trade in my sanity, but otherwise I'm very happy that I don't. You know, when he was 10 years old, God stuck his face in Blake's window and talked to him. That must have been very disturbing. So I knew that I was going to be in trouble when I finally wrote it. I mean, I'm happy basically with what it was, but what I learned from watching those guys on stage is that the bells and whistles aspect of it that I think I partly created as a hysterical reaction, as a nervous reaction to the fact that I was actually going to try and write this, that I needed to sort of strip that away. And also, I mean, it felt watching it, and it was in Dutch, but watching it, and I remember people in the audience listening very carefully, and a certain amount of sounds of acknowledgement and also some giggles that it was kind of going on and on in this kind of insane talk, and that was theatrical. Also, this is just a technical thing, but that Belize was absolutely a part of the action, and one of the big mistakes that has been made with that scene over and over again is forgetting that it's happening in two periods in time at the same time, and that it's a scene between three people, not two. And a lot of the changes were just in stage directions. They don't sit on the floor and talk. But I thought, oh, you know, this is actually a scene. That's really all, it's a scene. And it felt to me like this sort of something from a Talmudic study. You know, these guys were just sitting and sort of like discussing these enormous metaphysical, but it was just immensely eye-opening. And so when I went to the signature production, I went with that scene very much in my head and heart and thought, I'm going to find that thing that Ivo and the actors in Amsterdam found. And I feel like it worked. I really felt terribly indebted. And then many, many, many other bigger and smaller things as well. So that's exciting. That's the great thing about being a playwright. You're not like a novelist or poet. You don't have to do it by yourself. You have to sort of create the preconditions for really talented people to come in and tell you what you're trying to do. And that's the thrilling thing about working in the theater.
Here's a question for Mr. Van Hove, and even if it's in the theater, how much is lost in translation from the original English text to the Dutch text? Or maybe otherwise, if you could do this play on an alien planet only once, would you do it in English or in Dutch?
But the first thing, what's lost in the Dutch translation? I hope nothing. I hope it is a very good translation. Well, you know, that's what you hope for, and I think it is what Tony has written, with the realistic sides, with the philosophical things, with the humor, because that's also very important. And it's the best dialogue writer in the world. You know, it's like dark, deep, and with the flavor of humor. Great. So that's totally respectful. And I direct in different languages already, so for me that's not such an issue. For me it's important I can understand the actors, you know, that I can... and in this case, I don't know, that's for me it doesn't... I did this with my group, so that was for me the urge to do it with them, in this case.
Can I ask you a different translation question?
Oh.
Going from film to theater, which you've done a good deal of, and you do it a lot with Bergman, who was a really great...
And Cassavetes also a lot. I did opening night, Faces, and Husbands. Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm sort of curious as to whether or not the impulse is because you've found with Bergman or Cassavetes a really great playwright or writer of dialogic fiction, and you simply have an urge to treat this as a text. There's a lot of film in your theater work. People are filming themselves and video screens and so on. I'm just curious as to extent to which, we were talking earlier, we're very used as a culture to plays becoming movies, but going in the opposite direction.
Movies
It's not
becoming
unknown.
plays,
How much does it mean to you and to Jan and the actors that you're making this kind of backwards movement from?
Well, I did it a lot. Why? Because when I did opening night of Cassavetes on stage, well, you asked me, have you worked together with living playwrights? No, but this felt like bringing something to the stage that was like a world premiere. When I did Faces, nobody had done it before me. When I did opening night, Husbands, nobody had done it before me. It's the same with Cries and Whispers. Nobody had done it before me. It's like a world premiere. So it's as if you get Hamlet for the first time and there's a first production of it. That's one reason. The other and that's also because I make theater for a long time. So you're searching for things that you don't know, the things that you have really to explore in a deep way. But the second thing, and that's the most important reason for me, is that in these texts I found themes that I didn't find in theater plays. I give an extreme example. One of my personal favorites is Cries and Whispers. I've never read a play that deals in such a deep way with death and with dying. And for me that was like an ultimate challenge to bring that to the stage. How do you bring to the stage something that we all will experience in our life somehow, sometime? How do you bring that to the stage in a believable way? So it's like something that's very meaningful to me, but also a theatrical challenge. That's my reason to do it.
As you're working on it, do you refer back to the film, or do you just...
No, never. For instance, opening night I've never seen. That was an idea. No, I've never seen it. That was an idea from my dramaturg, and I said, "Oh, give me the text and I will read it." And I said, "What is it about?" He said, "About an aging actress that doesn't want to play the role of an old lady." I said, "Oh no, my God, who is interested in that?" And then I read it, and after 2 scenes, I said immediately, "Yes, I'm going to do it." And it became, I think our production, I think more people have seen our production than have seen the movie. We play it since 2006, it still goes on. And it's all over the world. Everybody, so it's something deep. I think Cassavetes, his texts are like, give me a cup of coffee, you know, but it's always there for a reason. Yeah. It's fantastic. And that's also, you say Ingmar Bergman, I did Visconti, I did all people that know very well, know a lot about actors and mostly also did theater.
Did theater, yeah.
They were also theater directors. And they did theater and movies at the same time. And you feel that in the dialogue, and you feel that in how they deal with a story. It's not about images only, it's about much more. In Cassavetes' Husbands, it's not really about the text, but the text is an instrument to go deeper. It's fantastic. Difficult, but fantastic.
Well, I hope everybody here will have the opportunity to see how Ivo has taken Tony's text much deeper than certainly any other time I had seen it. It's a tremendous production, and thank you so much for bringing it to the United States. Thank you for being here and speaking with us about it tonight, and thank you again for Breaking the Elements. I've been asked to remind everyone there are books for sale in the lobby. So from screen to stage to page. Thank you.